really, in working with horses, what it really is, whether you're riding them, where you're working around these corrals, or where you're selecting them, it's a behavioral type thing. It's a psychological. So I tell you what, if we all did a better job of trying to learn more about the horse, why they do certain things they do, we will all become much better horsemen. So this is, I guess, to talk about this horse a little bit. This is a horse that I adopted in 1987. He's off the Black Rock Desert Range up in the area north of Winnemucca. I also have there was a Palomino. I used to have another horse, kind of a match to him. It was a Palomino horse that the Marine Color Guard talked me out of, but it's been a very good experience. I'll kind of show you some things. I don't have a bridle on this morning, but things we want a horse to, when we get him kind of broke, we can ride him with nearly anything. There's no reason that any of our wild horses won't do this. It's just a matter of patience, give them cues that they understand, and so enough of that. Well, one other thing that you want to do also on your horse when you start riding them is the basic maneuvers to lead changes or anything, or side passes. But whether we ride any today, that's we'll kind of see how the thing goes. But first of all, I'd like to introduce some people that here today that we're very, very glad to be here. We have a lot of administrative people, BLM people are here today that we're really glad to see the interest. First of all, Mike Penfold. Mike, raise your hand, from our Washington office, Assistant Associate Director, then of course our State Director, Bill Templeton, and our District Manager, my boss, Jim Elliott. I really appreciate him putting up with me to try to get these things on, to try to help the situation of the wild horse. Then our next person is going to lead us today through our situation, to make us more aware. As a person that I've known a short time, but I highly respect. We talk a lot about why horses do things. I'm just intrigued with trying to understand more about a horse, why they do certain things they do. My horse days goes back to early days when I was riding behind. Remember riding behind my mother in West Texas. We working cattle on her family ranch. Then during the war years, when we rode them to school, the teacher even rode horses to school. It sounds kind of strange to some of you, but back in those days, you had to have money to buy gas. You had to have stamps to buy gas. So usually it was walking or riding a horse where I was from. So that's kind of where my days go back. Years ago, we just got on them and just over and under, and our hat went that way, and away we went. But I can tell you that's a bad deal. I wish I could apologize to some of those horses. So I think now what I'm really glad to introduce, Marian Simon, who has had a world of experience. She tells me, I know she's had 30 years of experience working with horses, and most of all, she spent about 17 years observing wild horses, or a lot of that time observing wild horses, a lot of time in the state of Wyoming, observing them out in the wild, why they do certain things like this. So I'd like to present to you Marian Simon, who will be our leader for today. I will kind of try to stay out of her way and try to keep enough horses up here, and we'll work with a lot of different horses.
Thank you, Fred. Well, I don't have a story that goes as far back as Fred, so I can't say I rode horses to school. But I can say that when I was a little girl, I grew up talking to horses and thinking everybody talked to animals, that it was totally perfectly normal. And I had parents that had adopted me, and so I figured, or they probably figured, that it was something I was born with and it would wear off as they conditioned me. And when I was about 7 or 8, they started telling me not to tell people that I talked to horses in public, to keep it quiet. And when I was convinced that what I wanted to really do was study animal behavior and communication, they actually let me pursue it by starting to look for universities that might offer that. But as you probably know, they don't give degrees in animal communication and understanding. In fact, they didn't even give degrees in animal behavior in this country. So I was disillusioned that as I got older, less and less people would admit that they talk to animals. Let me ask you, how many people here communicate with animals? Okay, great. We got a good group here. Now, how many people would admit this if I hadn't have asked? Okay, good. See, we've got an enlightened group here. Well, 15, 20, 30 years ago, not many people were wanting to admit what Fred was saying, that the way to work with animals is quiet and on their terms, not on our terms. And so I ended up trying to get a degree in understanding animals and communication. I ended up going to school in Wyoming and getting a degree in wildlife biology and another degree in range management, because they didn't feel that to be a wildlife biologist you had to know what anything ate. And if you were a range con, you really didn't have to know much about wildlife. Now, maybe not, University of Nevada may not be like that, but Wyoming was. And I spent most of my time studying wild horses, which at that point in 1973, 74, 75 and on, was considered a pretty dumb thing to do. In fact, I couldn't find an advisory professor that even wanted to sponsor me to study wild horses. They were considered a problem. They were considered a problem that nobody cared about except the local ranchers. And they thought it was a really unusual tract. So I had to change my, a lot of the work I did, the research, to be directed at ecosystems analysis, something that sounded scientific, and instead of wild horse behavioral ecology, which they didn't think would have any support. Well, in doing that, I learned a lot about horses. Having grown up with horses since I was about 4 or 5 years old, I thought that if you wanted to understand an animal, the best place to go was out in the wild and let it teach you. There's certainly wonderful materials in books telling us what we can do with a horse, but there was not much that told us about the horse itself. What's the creature like? What does it think like, feel like? What does it want to do when it gets up in the morning? Does it just want to stand in its stall and have someone bring it hay and to push its automatic waterer? Well, I found that each horse had a lot going for it out there. Every horse I met was different. A lot of the generalizations that had been written about horses were inaccurate, that there's many different personality horses as there are people. So, who's joined us now is a mare. And as far as I know about her, she came through the California prison system. She went through one of the California prison training programs. Okay. And we did a little selection yesterday on these horses because we didn't want any of them going over the fences. So if they all come in here and act very quiet, I think we've done a good job. If they come in here and run around like maniacs, then we're going to try to get everybody to quiet them, to settle them, to be relaxed around them. We have not picked all quiet horses to work with. In fact, she's not what I would call a quiet horse. She's obviously had some difficult interactions with people, and that's the reason that we brought her in this morning, is so she'll get more familiar being around people, more comfortable. So what's a horse? Any ideas? What is a horse? Some of you BLM people better know what a horse is. Is it a carnivore? No, herbivore. Okay. It's a four-legged herbivore, free-roaming, very, very social, spends a lot of its time interacting with others of its own species. It has a curious nature. It seems to have an affinity for humans. Has been domesticated for how many thousands of years? What is the priority in a horse's life? Come on, what's the priority in a horse's life? Food, that's a priority. Staying alive. Staying alive in a wild animal's life is probably the highest priority. over food and water is being alive. And that's where the fear comes in. As a prey species, everything their senses are attuned to tells them to be a lookout for something that's going to eat them. Food, water, and then what's else? Socializing and play. And that's where, and probably why people have had such a relationship with horses, is that in their time, when they don't have to be reproducing, eating, drinking, or running for their life, they're going to hang out and play. And that's the time that we spend with them, and that's the time partnerships are built. Not when they're hungry, not when they're breeding, but when they want to play, when they want to socialize. And because they're a herd group, they like to have friends. They like to make friends with people, other horses, other animals, goats, dogs, cats, whatever. What other animal wants to be friends with them, they usually like to have something to socialize with. So today what we're going to do, and I hope that if you have questions, please raise your hand and ask them, because this is not as much a demonstration and a lecture as it is sort of a working shop, a share shop. We don't, every horse that comes in may not do what we ask it to do or what we're encouraging it to do. And we will accommodate the horses that come in, because our result here is to show how to develop a shared awareness or a friendship with horse based on knowing as much as we can about what a horse thinks and feels and acts like. And this mare is a good one we thought to bring in this morning to show you what's her body language like. What is she doing? How is she sensing? Okay, smell. Probably one of the more important scents for a horse is their smell. Doing things like snorting. How many people know what kind of a behavior that is? She's taking a reading. She's showing that she's a little bit worried right now. She's talking to the other horses back there. She's smelling the ground. In smelling somebody else's urine, she can tell whether it was male or female, when they last drank water, what they ate this morning, and probably which group they're from. Now, how many of us can tell that by a handshake? Not bad, huh? Should be glad I don't make you guys start sniffing each other. If it was smaller, I would. Smaller group. But really, when you think about how a horse communicates, what do they want to do? First, they're going to look at you. Okay? And if they see something, then they're going to try to take a reading on it. Their ears will go up, and they'll see if they can hear anything. And then they're going to sniff. So they're taking a lot of sensory perception on what they're looking at. A lot more than what we do. We rely on a verbal communication. We rely on, if somebody tells us so, it must be so. If we see it, it must be so. But do we taste it and smell it also? Come on, let's look. Okay, now I'm going to ask her to pay attention to me a little bit. That's it. Good girl. And I want you to watch her body language. Good girl. Okay, her mind is still on the other horses. Good girl. Not a girl. Good girl. Okay, now that was a nice hello. That was not aggressive. That was friendly. Now this is a mare, I have to tell you, yesterday about jumped out of her skin when we tried to get close to her. So she's just in that little time has developed a little bit more trust. I mean, Fred can vouch for this. We had her all ready to go put a halter on her yesterday and took a halter out and she'd about jumped through over the fence. Now whether that's something that she's been worked with in a bad way, easy honey. Now in introducing yourself to a horse, you probably all know how to do it. There's different ways. Horses can learn any language we teach them. Some people prefer an open palm like this because it gives the horse something to smell. It can mimic the neck so that you're not invading their space. Other people prefer getting down low like this, which also can be respecting the space and letting the horse come to you. If you enter a horse's space, they're obviously going to back off, pin their ears if they're cornered, and do something. Now, she's letting me get awfully close to her today. Yesterday, she wouldn't let me in this kind of space. It may be because she's got a halter on now. It may be because she's more relaxed with the people. But watch her body language. Watch the set of her tail. Watch where her ears are going. Watch her lips. See how tight her lips are? Easy, honey. Good girl. Okay. Good girl. Good girl. Okay. Good girl. Okay. Yeah, let's move you off. Come on. Now I've gotten you too friendly, huh? Come on. I want you to come over. Come on. There you go. Good girl. Okay. Come on. Now I'm using my body language to work with her in a very slow, simple way. As I said, this is a mare that was pretty hot yesterday, and she's still very worried. And all on a mare like this you want to do is to try to get her relaxed and quiet, and so she's paying attention a little bit if you want to work with her. Her ears are going back and forth. Her ears are half paying attention to me in the crowd. She's half paying attention to other horses over there. Her tail set's pretty relaxed. It's not tight like it was yesterday. Her lips are still crinkled, if you notice, when she trots around. They're not relaxed yet. Come on. Snorting is still a wary behavior. You see how tight her lips are? Can you see that, how they're tight? Most wild horses will have tight lips. Yes?
When did this mare come off the range?
I don't know. Fred?
Last October.
Okay, and how long was she in the prison system?
Oh yeah, fall of '89. Yeah.
Okay, and how long was she in the prison system?
I don't know. I think they had her out there for a month or something like that.
So she just been in pens?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I want to show something else on you. Come on, sweetie. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Okay, watch her neck, too, what she does, and where she's shifting her weight in her body. A mare will a lot of times carry her head a little lower than a stud will. Good girl. You're being so sweet. Good girl. Now, she's being very, very kind to let me do this today. Yes, good girl. She's still worried. It's all right. She's wanting me to give space. You want to eat this, huh? You want to eat this, huh? Good girl. Come here. Come in this way. Can you eat it? Use you? Okay. That's a good girl. Okay. Now, if everything goes well today, these horses are all going to look like they're broke horses and been gentled. But I assure you, they aren't like that. And if we have time this afternoon, we can bring in a horse that hasn't had anything done to it, and we'll do the same thing. We'll work with it. But the idea is to show the different body languages. The people, now, if you were to describe this horse's personality, how would you describe her? Quiet? Cautious, good. She looks quiet today, doesn't she? Yeah. I think if we got a little aggressive with her, alert, very alert. Mares typically are going to pay more attention to stuff that's going on around them than a gelding will or a stud will. A stallion might be interested in breeding what another stallion says, but they don't have a whole lot to protect. A mare has a lot to protect. She has to protect the foals and the other mares. How many people know who runs the range out there? Stallion or a mare? Yeah, right, right. How many books have you seen about the black stallion and his band of mares and how he saves them from trouble? They never talk about the lead mare that saves them from trouble. I think everybody ought to go back and rewrite all the storybooks. But it is the mares that have to think. They have more stress on them than the studs do. The stallions can go out in bachelor bands and hang out as boys, where these mares, they are the ones that are, like a lot of cultures, they are the foundation for the culture and the society of the horse. If anybody's going to get in trouble, it's the lead mare's responsibility to let everybody know. So their fear level is usually a little bit higher. They're more aware, they're more alert, they're the ones looking around, seeing what's happening. You know, if she hears a whinny, she'll respond. She's going to be listening to it. Another stallion, unless he's very herd-bound, is going to be a lot different. He's not going to be paying as much attention to it. Can we get those babies maybe brought in now? She's being so good and quiet. You're being such a good girl. It's a good girl, yes. Yeah. Okay, come here, honey. Come here. Now, she's the personality of a type of mare that I would say is a worrier, a little bit. Even though she appears to be quiet, she's paying a lot of attention, and she tends to keep her ears back and forth, back and forth. She's concerned. She's a horse that is not the type you could push. We're going to bring out another gray mare later today that has only had a couple, 3 weeks of handling. And this mare acts like she's somebody's kid, pony. Different personality entirely. Loves to be handled, not a worrier. This mare is a worrier. So a horse like this is one that you need to go slow with. You need to spend a lot of time telling her how brave she is, how good she is, and letting her get confidence in herself so that she doesn't have to worry, so that the worry for survival can be passed on to the person, not the horse. And that's there. Now this kind of maneuver, the licking, all of you probably know that's a relaxed sign. Sign is a relaxed sign. The relaxing the tail so it's not clamped so tight so that she starts to swish the tail. Those are all signs you want to look for that show an animal's getting relaxed. These horses don't know that they're domesticated. They don't know that any of their brothers or sisters have been domesticated. And even though you may ride in on a domesticated horse, they're very family-oriented. It's very much like wolves. You don't see a lot of herds talking to each other in the wild. Most of them keep to their own groups, and maybe dads, you know, the stallions will go out there and nicker and talk a bit, and the babies sometimes, but not very often. You usually see families and groups staying in their own... You want something to say? Yeah, okay. Thanks. It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. There we go. It's okay. Thank you. It's okay. We're going to bring in quite a few horses and go through looking at personalities and how to work with them and how they're sensing us. Now these two babies, I'm not going to tell you anything about them. I want you guys to tell me. Let's see if you can pick up. Okay. How many relationships are there in a horse's life? Anybody have any ideas? What's the first relationship in a horse's life? Mother, right, mare foal. And then you've got foal, foal, or peer group, yearling, yearling. Then you've got a mare, mare in a group, and a stallion, stallion mare, reproductive, and a stallion, stallion. Where does a human come into a horse's life? How are you as a horse prepared to deal with a human? Think about it. You've been out on the range. Maybe you haven't been out on the range. Maybe you've just been born into a stall. But you don't know anything. Your genetics are not prepared for things that walk with arms and legs. That's not something you're programmed for. You're programmed for your mom, that's soft and furry, it's 4 legs, feels like you. You're programmed for other horses, but you're not programmed for people. So this is a relationship that people have to understand from a horse's perspective. Now these two have turned into buddies. They're in a peer group, and that's probably the easiest point at which to impact a horse in the relationship, is when they're in a babies, because you're on an equal, in a sense, with them. Now you've got a choice of interacting with them in a friendship as an equal or as a mare. Now if you were trying to educate a horse, which level would you want to interact with? Mare, right. What happens if you start interacting solely as a peer group? Playmate. Right, what happens? And yet you see this over and over again, not just with wild horses, but domestic. People think babies are cute, and they want to hug them and scratch them and hold, and they let them jump up on you. And that's all fine and good, but that foal just now thinks you're an equal. So what happens when they turn into a 2-year-old stud? And now they're jumping all over everything, and they don't respect the fact that you say no. Well, Mom never told me I had to. Who are you? But if you establish more of a maternal relationship with them, which they're prepared for, and you can educate in horse language, then they pay attention. And then there's no aggressiveness, there's no dominance, it's just respect. So now these two are quite different foals. They've spent the night together, so they've worked a little bit together. But in the herd, where would you think the bay horse would be in the group? I know it's hard because we don't have the group here, and you know it's easier to see when you've got the whole group. But can you, just looking at him, what kind of horse do you think he is? Right. Is that Terry said that? Kelly. I couldn't see. You're right. He was the bottom of the herd. But he was the guy, when everybody else was going one way, 100 miles an hour, he was still walking the other way, going, huh? What's the big deal? Now that kind of horse, he didn't have a buddy. Nobody liked him. He was a little slower than everybody. He didn't see what the big idea was when everybody's racing around, you know, hungering this way and hungering that way. This guy's just walking going, gee, you guys, how come you're running everywhere? Now that kind of horse, even though the other horses might not have thought he was very special, he's a good adoptable candidate. He's going to go do well with someone that's sort of quiet and maybe timid on their own. He's laid back. Now this chestnut one, where would you think he is? You say skitsy? I don't know, are you skitsy, huh? Okay, now he's one in the group that while all the other horses are vying for machoism, you know, where two of them are banging at the front to try to get to be the leader, he's the one that just pushed his way through and walked through the gate and left everybody behind. He did that twice. He's the quiet one. He's the kind of stud that you're going to see out on the range when two other stallions are out there matching each other. He goes and breeds the mare and leaves. He's a smart horse. Totally different personality, but you know what he had that was similar is he was quiet about it. His fear level was fairly reduced. This is a thinking horse. Now, a thinking horse is not a good match for a dumb person. So, needless to say, you want to make sure that you can be as smart as this horse if this was the type you were going to work with. He's the kind that you lock him in a 4x4 and he'll dig his way out or climb over. Not self-destructly, just very cautiously, one tier at a time. He's a thinker. Now matching up with this horse, they're going to go back in the group and he's going to have a buddy now. This bay horse has a buddy, and what kind of buddy does he have? A smart one. One that's not going to get him in trouble and get in fights with anybody, but somebody that's going to say, hey Joe, well those guys are fighting, let's go eat the grain over here. Now this is the kind of learned behavior you want to teach your horse. Horses learn about 80% of their behavior out there, and that's why we have such a hard time managing them. Is that the minute we do one study on a herd and we say, all horses do this, I studied them, you find that the other 99 herds didn't read your study. And they don't do that because they're different. And we have examples all through Las Vegas, or all through Nevada, where the water's an issue. That's true. Some horses want to go dig up water holes. But how many of you from Nevada have seen horses knock over a prickly pear and suck water out of it? They do it. Not every horse does it. Some horses do it. That's a learned behavior. You could get rid of a lot of prickly pear that way. So what I'm saying is most of their behavior is learned, and if you want to influence a horse, you want to have positive learned behavior for them. Now you can learn to communicate in horse language. Now obviously they're not going to think I'm a foal, and they're not going to think I'm their mother, but they are going to be interested enough in me that they will listen to me as little babies. And what's interesting that's happened overnight between these two is that even though the chestnut one tends to be a more dominant animal and a little smarter, because he's by himself now, and the bay horse is so relaxed about everything, he's let the bay horse take over a little bit and says, well, I'm going to watch you, whatever you do. But these two, they're going to go back in, they're going to be pretty equal. Let me see if I can give them something to think about here. The other reason that we're working them in pairs versus alone in here is, particularly with babies, and you may all understand this, but it's a lot less stressful to be with another horse, particularly one you like, than it is to be in here all by yourself. You know, and with a baby, it's not likely they would do anything crazy, but we don't want to risk it. So giving them another horse to play with, it makes it easier for them. Now, are you going to roll, or are you just smelling? Come on, guys. Come on over here and say hi. That's it. That's it. There we go. Now, Mr. Curiosity is, if he were in here long enough, would probably start trying to stick his head through and see what's going on out there. There's that curiosity in a horse, and that's the point where we can intervene the most. If you ever go out and you study them in the wild, you'll notice that usually the mares are the ones that take off. The bachelor bands are the ones that are most interested in finding out what you are. It's the male horses. They've got more time to play, less responsibility, more delinquent behavior. But they can hang out. So if you want to get close to wild horses, pick a group of bachelor guys to hang out with and see how close you can get. Spend the night out there with them and see how many are going to come up to you. The curiosity will get to them. If they have all their other fears taken care of, they want to know what you are. They want to taste you, feel you, pull you, scent you. If we left these guys in here long enough, they would probably start to come up behind me, obviously not in front of me, and pull my hair or sniff my hair or start sticking their noses through to see if they can stick it through on the other side of the fence to see what you all are. But we're going to move on to the next horse. Can we bring in one of the 4-year-old colt stud? Maybe the 4-year-old stud? Or the 2-year-old. Do you have one or the other? The black one's fine. There he goes. He says, now what is this? That's it. Good boys. Good boys. It's all right. Easy. Oops. There's that big black horse, huh? To tell you a story, we had another horse in here yesterday, and we turned Blackjack loose in here with him, thinking, he's a good, quiet horse. Well, old Blackjack decided he was going to pick on these youngsters. There were two-year-old colts, or 2-year-old and a 4-year-old colt we had in here, studs. And Blackjack just walked around nonchalantly, acting as though nothing was going on. And then he just pinned his ears and turned his head and see those horses shoot out from underneath. And he did it as a joke, and then he'd walk off like, I'm not doing anything. And then as soon as those horses would start to get relaxed, he'd just walk up to them, just walk, not trot, with his ears pinned and just stare at them. And they'd try to move, then he'd try to move. In other words, Fred taught him how to work a horse. So now he's figuring, I think I'll work these guys, give them a run. Well, these poor colts, here they thought they were stallions. And they got this 6-, 7-year-old gelding pinning his ears at him. Embarrassing. But you know, that's what's happened with horses is that even though we geld them when they're young, when they come in off the range and they get gelded, their behaviors can change, but they don't change as dramatically. If they were left in a wild situation, you would see a lot of these geldings still mimicking the stallion's behavior. Because a lot of it is behavior and not just hormonal, when they establish themselves in a position or a role, they tend to continue with that position or role. And of course, you know, no studies have been done to say how long does that last. I tend to think that it has a lot to do with the personality of the animal, and that if you have a very much of a leadership stallion and you geld him, he's still going to be a leader. I mean, you may take something away from him, but you can't take his leadership away from him. And you could have a stallion that's way down, and as I was just telling you with Blackjack, you could have these 4-year-old and 2-year-old colts, these stud horses come in, and this old gelding just takes one look and says, guys, jump, and they jump. Okay, and here comes one of the 4-year-olds. Come on. Here we go. Okay, first thing he does, sniff, smell. That's the fastest way to the horse's brain, is through the scent. As I said, he can get a reading on who's been here, what we did to them, whether they're still alive, all just from smelling. And then tasting for a stallion's important too. You know, a lot of times if he'll find urine, he'll taste it, or manure, they'll taste it, to take a reading on who was last here and what they ate for breakfast. So letting a horse smell things is important. And it goes even farther when you work with all horses. You know, you see a lot of times people where a horse once puts its nose down and sniff manure, and people don't let it. You know, they usually kick them, get on, you don't need to do that. Well, a horse sort of needs to do that. That's like saying you don't need to talk. But for a horse to know what's been going on, smell and taste are very important. They spend anywhere from 50 to 75% of their days are spent touching, sniffing, chewing out there, whether it's rocks, dirts, or each other. And so to take that away from them and put them in some place where they don't get to sniff, chew, and lick is taking away a very strong behavior. Now, stallions are usually more oral than mares are. Mares do a lot of nurturing behavior, but they don't do as much teething, biting in captivity. Now, how many of you have had wild horses, both stallions and mares? Okay. Have you noticed that to be true with yours? Have you watched them closely? You notice if you confine a stallion and you confine mares, you'll find mares do a lot of particularly if they've got foals, they'll do a lot of nurturing behavior, a lot of scratching. A stallion that does not get enough oral stimulation when they're young, say if they're pulled off their mommies too soon, a lot of those horses will end up being wood chewers and chomping and biting. They have a lot more oral energy that they need to do something with. Now, if they're out in the range, they're playing. They're biting and wrestling and having a good time. But if they're in a confined situation with no playmates, they don't get to use that energy off, and it all gets stuck in the mouth a lot of times. That's why they end up sometimes being biters. It's not that they want to, it's just they got a lot of energy they don't know what to do with. Now tell me about this horse. Where do you think he'd be in a group? What kind of horse do you think he is? Do you think he'd be the one running everybody else around? Do you think he'd be the one left behind? No, probably not. He's probably neither. He's probably a horse that's going to be fairly much in the middle. He's a horse that wants to, he's got a curiosity about him. He wants to be with people. You know, you can look at his eye and look at his ears. There's part of him that says, oh yes, and his eye starts to soften. And then there's part of him, his body says, oh no, I forgot, you're human. And this is what happens. These animals, part of them see a relaxed friend, but their instinct and where they've been educated has said, no, Mom never told me about this. And what we do when we domesticate the animal is we say, yeah, it's okay. I'll be your friend. You can trust me. I'm not going to violate your trust. And that means that we don't violate it. Now, again, to say all these horses are going to come in here with a crowd and be this quiet, you guys all probably think we've worked them all. We haven't done anything to these horses. And so this is why, you know, to allow them to come in here and be this quiet around this many people, to me, is a positive behavior. If the horses came in and they're running around and we start working them and getting them all yahoo, then that becomes a nervous experience. And then the next time they come into a round corral with a lot of people, they're going to instantly think, run, I need to get away. Whereas right now, you know, if he decides to roll here, he's not really caring that much about us. Now, you're all being a really good audience, and let me just congratulate you on that, because there's two ways to see what we're doing today. There's what's called an active observer, which is how we're trained as scientists to be, to look at, to distance ourselves, to say that we are not participating at all, therefore we're a good observer. And then the other side of the coin, which I choose to work with, and have found that in working with wildlife you can get a lot closer, and that's as a passive participant. And as a passive participant, okay, what do you think he's doing? You guys all should know now. What's he going to do now? Is he going to pee? He better. He can't. He lost all his wee-wee, I guess. Oh, nope, there he goes. Okay. Typical stallion behavior. Once he does it, he'll be happy. He can come back tomorrow and do it again. Same place, same time. Okay, now what's that going to tell another horse? It's going to tell him that Black's been here. And the next horse that comes in, next stallion, may do the same thing. Now we've had 2 stallions and 1 mare all pee in the same spot. It's kind of nice. Too bad we can't train our domestic horses to all do that. You can only go in the one spot. Horses are very neat when they're left out in the wild. They have nice little stud piles. They put all their manure in one pile, and they put all their urine in another spot. Now, how many of our domestic horses do that? Does anybody have your horse trained to only go in one spot? Yeah, you can do it. But since you were this high, your mom said, no, you do it over there. When you're taught from a horse to do it right, you do it right. But people think that we got to clean stalls all the time and that they go all over the place. And yeah, they do, unless we train them otherwise. So if you can have another horse train them how to do it right by having more of a group situation, you can make your job a lot easier. Okay, come on, let's see we want to show you off a little bit more. I know you're very relaxed, but come on. Now he's been worked, how long, Fred? About a week. Okay. And how would you describe him now compared when you first started with him?
Confidence level was kind of low, but I've seen him progress a lot. When we worked with him yesterday, especially more confident. And that's what we do.
Can you all hear Fred? No. Okay, he's saying when he started this horse last week, he did not have much confidence. He wanted to be good, but really lacked a lot of confidence. Now, we worked just a little bit with him yesterday, not doing anything more than just this kind of stuff. Walking around with him and saying, hey, come here, look at me, sniff me, good, okay. And keeping him, that people are fine. You know, you don't want to get him to run over you, but you want him to just be relaxed around you. And as he's showing today, he's a whole lot more relaxed. He's not even paying much attention to you guys out there. Not paying much attention to anything, which is great. Come on. Come on. Okay. He says, I'd rather smell everything, which is a great way to sense. Now, this is a horse that probably is going to come around pretty fast. He wants to be a friend. He probably wanted to have friends in the herd, and he would be one that I would say is not going to be up at the top, not going to be at the bottom, but maybe at the lower of the middle, with a friend that's going to be maybe a little bit like that bay colt that came in, that's not going to be a reactive sort of horse. He's not going to jump out of his skin if something went off. He might scooch a little bit and stop, as compared to a horse that would just go over and keep going and going and going. This is a very workable kind of horse. He's the kind of horse that, you know, if he can come in here and stand here like this, you have to realize that even to be around this many people can be very stressful for these horses, particularly after they've been worked through these pens. So the fact that he's being this quiet is, we need to reward him, and we're going to bring him back later this afternoon or later this morning and do and show a little bit of how to work and extend the relationship with him. But let me use him just a minute and talk to you a little bit about getting close and why I think Fred's done such a good job with these horses too. And most of you folks that work with horses will know this. This is plain common sense, horse sense, wherever that came from. But in studying people getting close to horses over the last well, not just horses, but wildlife of all sorts in the last 18 years, I started looking for what are similar characteristics. What do you think people have, that probably all of you have, that allows you to have an affinity with your animals? Give me some descriptions, some characteristics. Why isn't this horse just jumping around here? Okay, calm and relaxed. Good. Good point. The more you can think about being asleep in bed around a wild animal, the less stressful it is. Now, if I get stressed, I can get angry and start getting just in my look to him. He says, I don't believe you. I can't get angry very well, can I? Well, I worked a little bit too much with him yesterday. I spent about half an hour with him. So he now knows me, and he can read me better than I can read him. And that's the thing with these horses. A wild horse's sense are so much more on than a domestic horse. And I won't say every domestic horse, but any wild species. Their senses are turned on. So if you're not honest with them in the first 30 seconds you meet them, you've lost them. You might get them back, but they know, they've read you. If he comes in here and I'm nervous and I'm upset, say I had a bad day, he's going to feel that stress, and that sets the pace. Now, we can overcome that, but it takes time. If he comes in here and I'm sitting here ready to lie down and go to sleep, he senses that. It's more the energy than it is the action or even the body language. He's using his sense of smell. So what do you think I want to smell like? If you were a horse, yeah, manure all over me. You know, if I really wanted him to like me, I'd put some mare or something on me. But think about how many people smell like meat eaters. What do we eat? Okay. Now, I don't happen to eat a lot of meat, and in fact, for the last week, I haven't eaten any meat. Because I found when I went out to get close to wild horses or any prey species, I got a lot closer when I didn't smell like a carnivore going, whoom, whoom, whoom. So if I can smell like an herbivore, I already have a little bit less stress put on him. Now, the other thing is perfumes and deodorants and all the other stuff we wear. They get used to it, but it covers up their ability to sense who we are. So if you're nervous and you want to cover it up, yeah, use something perfumey. It can cover up that smell. If you're relaxed and you want the horse, you want the animal to like you and to know you, be familiar with you, don't wear anything but yourself. Let them get used to you, being relaxed. They can smell whether you're nervous or relaxed. They can smell what you had for breakfast last night, how much alcohol you had, probably how many hours worth of sleep you got. They can tell all that from smelling. Now let's add my body language to it. Now he's going to pay attention to me, so if I start flapping around like this, you know, this is more aggressive. Come on. You're going to look like an old plow horse before long. Not a wild stallion here. Come on. He says, you're not really doing this. I know you. In fact, he may start to play with me a bit because he doesn't really believe I'm very tough. And you know what? That's fine. I don't want him to think I'm tough. I want him to think of me, though, that to pay attention to me. If he did anything aggressive at all to me, I would respond like his mother would respond. Now, what would he think a mare would do to him? Yes, you know, what does a mare do? She'll pin her ears. Ever watch a mare when a stud comes up and she doesn't want him around? Or a youngster? Any of you ever seen a group of mares where a 2- or 3-year-old will come up? What does she do? Well, the first thing she'll do is they don't like to really stop eating if they're eating. She'll pin her ears. And if they don't get it, then the second thing she'll do probably is swing her head. If they don't get that, then the third thing she'll usually do is turn and lash out at them with her teeth. And if they still don't get it, I mean, if they're retardo horses, then she'll back them into a corner and kick them. Now that's 4 chances you got to understand what I just said. And those were very clear things. Now if people communicate in that way with a horse, you're giving horse language. Now that doesn't mean now our ears aren't long enough, but we can do the same sort of body language. We can say, we can back up into them. We can put our heads down and swing. Or sometimes people will use their arms. I mean, that's why, you know, this waving stuff is bothersome to them. No, you're not rolling. Come on. Come on, wild horse. Okay, we're listening. He says, oh, snort. She's getting serious now. Okay, ho, ho, ho. Good boy. Now he's relaxed enough that most stallions will face you. When they're worried, they look at you. He's not very worried. In fact, he's not even looking at me anymore. He's not paying much attention to me at all. Now this is the state you want them in before you start to do work with them. If you can't get a horse so that they're this relaxed with you, where they can walk around you, sniff you, touch you, and you start to do a lot of work with them, you can get it done, but remember, you're going to have a stressful relationship. This kind of a relationship is a trustful relationship. Now, he's still a wild horse. He's never had a bridle on. He's been worked a little bit. Yesterday, I think, was the first time he was really led around, Fred. Yeah, and you know, he didn't exactly say, oh, I know how to do this, but after he went about 4 or 5 strides, he went, oh, I got it. My mom taught me how to follow. I don't need to pull. And we led him with a loose line. You want to do some work with him a little bit now? I'm just thinking, because he's ready to work with. Yeah, I think we can work with him a little bit. Okay? Now this stallion, this horse, as I said, is in the state of mind that you want a wild horse to be in when you're going to start working with him. So we're going to work with him just a little bit now. Come here, honey. Oh. Now that I've said it, now see, my whole posture's changed. He knows what I'm doing. He says, work. Come here, honey. Oh. Oh. Oh, honey. Oh, babe. Go. 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 Now he's sensing everything I'm doing, including my thoughts, and I don't know if I've added that yet. But when you work in communicating with animals, they are going to know what you're thinking, whether you think they know it or not. If you're thinking they're going to do something to you, 9 times out of 10 they will do it. Particularly wild horses. If you're thinking, oh, they're not going to hold still and they're going to move off, or this one's going to get skitsy and run off, they do, because they're sensing that. Why they can tell that, we don't know. But try it. Start working with horses. Go in with the thought of, I'm going to eat you up. And see what happens. See, watch their ears. See if their ears don't at least start flicking. Even with your domestic horses, go in with that thought. I'm going to eat you today. And see what happens to them. You'll watch. You'll make them nervous. And they won't know why they're sort of uncomfortable, why they're nervous. And then go in with the idea, I'm going to go to sleep today. And see how relaxing that is with them. Okay, come here, hon. Do you have, let's see, now this horse has only been worked with a halter.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have that long, softer rope for him?
Yeah, this one? This one?
Yeah, is that the one that you...
You mean fishing with it?
Yeah, that might be a good one to work with. Come here, hon. Come here, sweetie. Got my wind. Okay. Oh, babe. Yeah, look at all those people over there. Oh. Now this horse has gotten a lot of confidence. He's not snorting. He's not, what I'm trying to get him to do, I want to push him a little bit to see if he's going to give you a stallion reaction, which would be to pin his ears a little bit when I press him a little bit. What a stud will do a lot of times, and we may have to bring another horse in to do this, to demonstrate this, because he's pretty confident. Oh, babe. Oh. Oh. Oh, babe. Good boy. Good boy. Is if you start to get a little bit too much in their space, they'll usually drop their heads down, like a mare will, and they'll pin their ears. And then they may even raise their lips and start mouthing a bit. Now, if they do that, and you don't back off, the next time you're probably going to get lunged at. And it'll be a sudden lunge. It'll be a jump forward and jump back, because they're really sort of scared when they do it. Now, he's not going to demonstrate that for us. He's a little too relaxed with us. He trusts us too much to want to do anything aggressive. Here, Fred, you want to tell him? I want Fred to tell you what he's going to do now. This is a little invention of his.
Let me tell you a little bit about this,
Look at this.
this horse.
Maybe I can understand. This horse is a horse we've been training a lot of horses go to the Marine Color Guard, and this horse is a 4-year-old. I think Mary Ann might have mentioned it. What we're trying to do, we started off. We've got 5 of those Palomino horses in the Marine Color Guard now, and 2 chestnuts, and now we've decided maybe these black horses would work a little bit better. So we're starting off. I picked this horse because I like his personality. I think he's the kind of horse that we can build a good foundation under. Nearly any rider can get along with him if they don't try to beat up on him. And so this is my first start in putting a string of black horses together. This horse is, he come out of Augusta in February, Augusta area north of Austin. So this will be our start at black horses, and he's kind of the mid-size, about the average size of a black horse, a wild horse. Whereas those Palomino horses, they're entirely too big. And they bring them in here, we'll look at them. Well, they're massive horses, and all wild horses are not that big. Now, what we're really doing, I use as much at times we have a tendency to rope horses, and I tell you that when you start roping them, you better plan on continuing. But I pick up all the old rope and mock panels I can find, and it depends on how soon I've started them. Sometimes I tie 2 or 3 of them together, and I just simply never get them excited, and just slip the rope over their neck. And I use most of my training with a rope. I always, now this, it's just a nylon rope. The big thing with any rope you use, they got to have a good Honda, a metal Honda in it, that you put a rope around a lot of these wild horses' necks with a long mane, and it'll get tangled up in their mane, and you better have your pocket knife ready because you're going to choke him to death. So that's why I always use a metal ring. First of all, you can't tie a horse up with it because you're going to break your ring, and that's good. So rope can be dangerous for you and a horse too. But I'll demonstrate catching this horse. All horses have an escape area. You conventionally, this horse now, he feels pretty comfortable with us, with about, well, Marianne's getting closer there, about 4 or 5 feet away. Now, when I first start working a lot of horses, I step in front of them, get them to stop, then I have 4 or 5 mop handles tied together, and I simply just slip the rope up over his head.
Before Fred goes ahead and shows you his little, his way of roping, what I wanted to show you is just what I'm doing with him. Okay, first place, I'm not trying to catch him as much as I am asking him to let me be in his space. Okay, and the more he allows me into his shoulder area, the more he's accepting me. Now with a stud, I shouldn't say with a stud, every horse likes to be approached a little differently. In general terms, a stallion and most wild horses want you to approach more head-on so they can see you. A domestic horse a lot of times will feel more comfortable when you're coming in more at their shoulder. But a wild horse, they want to take a complete sense reading on you. They want to see you, they want to smell you, and they want to keep you at a distance so that if they need to run, they can get out. If you approach them at the shoulder, they're going to try to always turn and face you until they get relaxed with you. Now when a horse gets relaxed with you, like what I was trying to do was get my shoulder closer into his shoulder. Okay? That's more of a nurturing position. That's where a mare will stick her foal. That's where horses go when they're scared. If there was another horse in here with him and we started rallying them up, they would start going where? Shoulder areas. You ever see them when they get bunched up? What do? Like they say, they play a game that says, let's see how squished we can get and make ourselves into one horse. They put each other's head and neck over everybody's body, and that's a very nurturing position. Now this, I told Fred, I said, you know what I like to call this is the lizard catching. It's a typical wildlife catching tool. And what it is, it's slow, it's quiet, it's predictable. And that's why these horses let a rope be put over their head like this. If he were winging it and throwing it and lassoing, that's fast movement, that's scary movement for an animal. Everything slow for wildlife is the best. You know, if you learn one thing, it's go slow. You can do almost anything you want if you go slow enough, because it gives the animal a chance to sense you, to see it, and to realize it's not going to eat it. Things that eat you, most of them have never had their ears twitch, so they aren't really particularly head shy unless they've had a problem being handled. So anywhere that you can touch them and be slow and quiet about it, most places they're going to like it. If you see a horse that starts to move off, that gets nervous when you start to touch him, okay, see how he's using his jaw? He's just chewing and moving his tongue around? That's relaxed. If you get a horse that's a little nervous if you start to scratch, just put your hand on and hold. Just hold. It's a very soothing quality to just have something hold you. He can feel your energy. He knows, again, you're not going to bite him or eat him. And it's giving him a level of confidence and trust. He's a good boy. Now, he's still not relaxed completely. He's more relaxed, but if you can see how he's standing, he's tight in his body, in his muscles. He's still a little tight. He hasn't completely relaxed. He's allowing me to do this. The farther back a horse will let you go, the more they'll trust you. So if you start quietly with the head neck region, and you can work to the shoulder area. See, I'm getting behind him now. This is for a horse kind of scary because I could eat him back here, and he couldn't get out of the way. I'm not in front of him. So he's allowing me to do this, and this is showing trust. Now with a horse that's done this well, that's relaxed this way, this is where you quit if you're working with him. You know, you don't need to keep pushing. Every time, if he starts to get stressed, you've pushed too hard. It's just like with kids. If every time you take them out, it's a good experience for them and it's fun, then life's going to be good. Not to say that every time a horse gets processed it's going to be fun for them, but you don't have to have things be stressful. Whether you're doing this to get a horse used to you and haltering and gentling, or whether you're doing it when you're going to put them in a trailer, you don't have to load them in a trailer in one day. Do it slow. Feed them. Again, make your motions slow. Getting back to just sharing with you some of the characteristics of being able to get close to this horse.
We halter horses here when people adopt them. They drag around a long rope and all this kind of stuff with a halter on them. But I don't like that sneaking up. Don't think that that's the proper thing to do. Now, remember, I don't know what kind of corrals you always have, but I like these horses. I always put a rope. Remember, you slip a rope on them, you better have your long hook that you can take it off. You're going to have to take it off at the end. He might not let you get up close to him, but that's fine. But the thing about it is, the rope, the nylon rope, or any kind, but I like a rope that's pretty hard. When I pull on it, and immediately I might get over the side, I give him slack. And he learns right quick. Hey, when I sit back, but boy, when I give a forward motion, boy, I get relief. And I think it's really one of the best tools. And I'll tell you another thing about these ropes, whether they can work good. In other words, you remember, this is about how closest you're going to get to that horse. We'll get some more out here, but I won't spend too much time. What is so good, this is an extension of my arm. This is how I start reducing that escape area. We just keep working. And an old rope, you don't have to have sophisticated stuff. You can get good results with just these old cheap ropes. Rub them with it around the ears.
I also say the reason why this horse is so relaxed like that is because he's never had a rope thrown at him.
Mm-hmm.
If he'd been roped and you start throwing a rope around him, he's going to be a lot more stressed.
Yeah, it's roping horses is one of the fun things to do. A few people are around them a lot, but it's the worst thing that you can possibly do. So just refrain from it. Use your ropes. Build that confidence. Remember, like Maran said, this horse views us as the biggest predator that he's ever encountered. The most important thing to him is save his life and to avoid pain. So try to stay away from the pain situation and reward him. Most horses find those spots with them that they'll let you, like Marianne's talking about. Horses, usually they'll tell you right quick which is their main line of defense, front legs or back. Normally a stud is his front legs. He will try to get you in a position where he can always strike you. So you keep working and you find places he will accept on his head. First, we let him smell of us on their nose. That's telling us, hey, that's hello, handshake. Some of them will start letting you work. It's kind of a fleshy place up below the ears. This horse likes for his ears to be kind of pulled. Find those goody places that they like. Also a place I found right quick, he likes to be under the chin. Some horses despise it. Every one of them's got a different personality. But look for those areas. Keep doing that. Betty told me if I rubbed her this much, well, we'd get a little bit.
You want to come on in? Okay, what's your name?
Kim.
Kim. And you're from where?
Tahoe.
Tahoe. Okay, Kim. Well, I'm not going to go through the techniques yet, but I'm just going to go ahead and let Kim go through how he introduces himself to a horse. And then you can tell me afterwards what you're doing. And maybe I can describe a little bit what you're doing too. Okay, now do you have horses?
No.
Okay, have you ever had horses?
No.
Okay, good. You just brought up one of the facets that in the techniques I found that allow people to be interact positively with animals, and that is people that have never had any experience with the animal before sometimes have an easier time. Now, why do you think that is? No fear? Good. No knowledge of the animal? They've never seen a bad horse or a good horse? They have no judgments by which to make a decision that, well, my granddaddy used to go out and buck these suckers out. They don't know that. So it's almost sometimes better to have no knowledge of the being, figure that there's some creature from outer space, and you're going to learn as much as you can about them. And that allows you to be open, having a completely open slate about wiping out any prejudice you might have about horses. Okay, that's the first, actually the very first thing I found about people that had an affinity for horses. So why don't you go introduce yourself to him, Kim? Now, even though Kim's a new person, this horse took an instant reading on him. And I wish we had videotapes to compare it to yesterday, because you would all be real surprised at how this horse is acting. Now, I would say that Kim obviously has some sort of an affinity with the horse. Any BLM people want to do this? Good. We got a BLM person?
I'll try it. No.
Okay. Well, you've just met a wild horse. Okay, you can look at his body posture, and the horse is very relaxed around him. His eyes soft, his tail's not too tight. He's still a little tight because he's protecting himself. And as Fred said, a stallion wants you in front of him, because if he's going to come at you, he wants to be able to strike you with his legs. A mare, she sometimes, if she's going to come at you, she's going to kick you. That's why I got pretty close to him behind when I was walking next to him. It's very unlikely that a stallion will let you get behind if he's worried. He's going to turn and face you if he's worried, and he's going to come at you with his legs. You can pretty much get close to a stallion like that and be fairly confident. I mean, I wouldn't say do this to everybody, but be fairly confident he's not going to kick at you. A mare, I wouldn't do that to. And we'll bring in another mare and work with her, and I'll show you the different body postures. Now, this horse is getting what we would call familiarization trained today. And by the end of the day, he ought to be a puppy dog. You said he's going to the color guard? So he's going there. This is showing you just within a few days what can be done with a horse like this. Now, Kim, you've never had a horse before. Do you have any other animals?
Dogs.
Dogs, okay. Okay, I'd like somebody from the BLM to come in and work with this horse.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Did a good job. Yes. Come on, Kelly. We know you're good, Kelly. Okay, who's this? Tracy. Oh, good. Nice to meet you. I'm Marianne Simons. Okay, yeah. Okay, Tracy, let's see how you introduce yourself to this guy. Then we're going to have to bring in a new horse. Again, the hello, the introduction, the smell. He's probably going to fall asleep now that Tracy's got him. The other characteristics of working with animals that I found, the similarities were that besides being open, people were very friendly. They had a joy about them. They wanted to see the horse. They wanted to meet the animal. It wasn't as much a scientific attitude as a friendship attitude. The other characteristic would be that they were focused. Their attitude and attention was on the horse. It wasn't on what they were going to fix for dinner tonight. It wasn't on, what they were going to do when they got home. It was on the horse. Now, what's the average time that a horse can focus on a person if they were worried about something? If a horse is worried about you, or any wildlife's worried about you, they can look at you and hold a pose for as long as they need to. Now, the average person's ability to focus is only about 4 seconds. Only 4 seconds. And before something else starts coming into our minds. Let's just test everybody here. Think about a minute. Think about a big red ball for a minute. Just close your eyes and think about a big red ball. Now, when you no longer can think about the big red ball, raise your hand. Just a big red ball. Some of you guys aren't even thinking about the big red ball. You can't even get it in your thoughts. Big red ball, what's that look like? That just goes to show you where our focus is. A horse's focus and any wildlife's focus, it's on the moment. It's present. It's right here and now. It's not out there. And that's another characteristic. There are people that are open, they're friendly, they're focused. They're also empathetic. They have the ability to feel and sense like the horse feels. Not just, oh, the poor little horse, he's so scared. No. Being empathetic means that you can think and feel like the animal. You're starting to perceive what's going on around you like the animal can perceive. And then the fourth or the fifth and the last is being respectful. There's a lot of people that love animals and they nurture them, but they don't respect them. And by respect, that means honoring every animal, every being for what it is, not what it isn't, not what we want to make it into. And so after looking at these, I've called these techniques the offer techniques, O-F-F-E-R, because they have consistency about them. People are open, friendly, focused, and empathetic. Tracy, you did a great job. This horse hasn't had anything done with him. He's a 2-year-old stud. Again, I want you to look at his behavior, what he's doing, trying to sense, listen, look, smell, all at the same time. Now, his behavior when he came in wasn't quite as relaxed as the other horses. He didn't come in here and instantly put his nose on the ground. This horse came in with his head up. Well, now, see, they make liars out of you every time you say that. The more relaxed they are, the more time they're going to spend with their nose on the ground. The more stressed they are, the more time they're going to spend with their head up in the air. Looking around, being able to keep everybody in view. As he settles down, he'll start to walk around, sniff, taste the dirt, probably go urinate in the same place all the other horses have urinated when he finds it. That's sort of the boy thing to do. We thought it might be helpful to let you see Fred do what he does best. He has spent a number of years working with these horses, and as he mentioned, he started out as sort of a cowboy and figured that that's how you work these animals, and then through his own process has realized that he's gotten a lot farther along with these horses with a lot less injuries by being very quiet and slow and relaxed with them. And so, you know, this is a horse, as I said, has had nothing. The only way we got him from one end to over here yesterday was we turned him loose and hoped he'd follow a mare. He's a 2-year-old. Do you think he followed the mare? No. For about 5 strides, and then he decided to go do something else. So it took us a while to get him to come over here because he doesn't lead. He's never been handled. But I thought it'd be fun for you to see how to take a horse that's had nothing done with it. The only thing he's had done is he's been processed, which has meant he's gone through the chutes and he's been branded and vaccinated and he's had paste wormer up his mouth. So the only handling he's really had has been negative. And let Fred show you what he does. And keep in mind, what I want you to do as the audience is I want you to watch this horse's behavior change, you know, what he goes through. You can see when he's being stressed. This horse is under a lot of stress right now, and he's a little worried. As he starts to settle down, and because everybody around here, your energy is very quiet and very relaxed, you know, if we're successful, this horse is going to be like the last big black stallion. He won't want to leave when we're done with him. He'll find that it's comfortable to be here. He's got friends here. So, Fred?
Actually, when I work with horses, there's a lot of different methods that can be used working with horses. Now remember, horses rule their kingdom by pecking order. The personalities that the real nervous type of horses are the horses that never make any decisions. They're the horses that the lead mare makes all the decisions. So the first thing that I might attempt working with a horse, knowing that they're pecking order, I establish the fact that I'm going to be higher on the pecking order than he is. I'm going to be the colonel and he's going to be the private. So what we started things, never really getting after him much, we start our communications simply by changing directions. Now I have to get this horse to change directions some. Now, see, this is a form of communications. When I start, I may get after him a little bit, never hitting him. We always remember that we got to get a little bit of respect in these horses, but you get respect by simply doing things that they understand what you're doing. We don't talk horse language very well, and nor do they understand English. But what we're really trying to do is get him to move around a little bit, change. He looks at me as the biggest, ugliest predator he's ever been around, and he's wanting to save his life. Now normally I'm going to start back. We put this horse in with another horse yesterday. We put him in with another horse to get him to the point where he's kind of fence broke. We won't get him where he's trying to jump out. Now I haven't really established the fact that I'm the colonel yet. He's not paying much attention to me. So we'll get a little aggressive. He's watching people more a little. I don't want him to turn his tail to me. I find it kind of hard to put a halter on his tail. I want him to stop. And the other thing, what really threatens a horse, all of them, then we'll start, we're getting where we can turn him a little bit. We're starting to get a little communications with him. In a minute, we'll put a rope on him. Now, this is a good sign right here. Well, we'd like to see him lick his lips, let out a deep breath. We're starting to develop a little bit, and we'll start see how close our escape area is. We never look him in the eye, because when we look him in the eye, we challenge him and say, hey, buddy, we want to fight. We look down. We look down, and sometimes if we could say, hey, if we could shake hands with you, it'd be a lot better. And also another thing that I find, if I want this horse to lose every little bit we've gained here in the last minute or two, I put on my sunshade. He's looking in my eyes a lot. So I said, hey, partner, what are we going to do? Good sign. Good stuff. So we transmit fear, we transmit anger through our eyes. Sometimes if you get a little tight in things, just whistle. Can you frown when you're whistling? Be relaxed. The horse senses when we be relaxed. But the reason they actually want to act like wild horses, we treat them like wild horses. If we're just easy with them, we start building a trust. Now we're starting to get some communication. And we're going to ask him to turn to the right now. Come on. You might notice my method just a little bit different than what Marianne does. I've tried to establish the fact I'm higher on the pecking order than he is. And I have to get after him a little. I never hit him. Never work on him. The fact is, we'd like to say it's not all that bad. The other thing I find with working the horse, I work with a lot of them. Usually the older they are, the more time it takes, but an old horse can be a very good horse for you. But the thing about it is, you better be committed to spend some time. And I think a lot of our failures is the fact that people don't have the time to devote to their horses. It's not having an endurance thing that goes 5 hours a day. It's simply being able to commit, say, maybe 30 minutes a day to him. And see, this horse is starting to relax pretty well, pretty good. I think we've pretty well established the fact that, hey, I'm the colonel. I'm higher on the pecking order than you are. So what we'll do, we'll show you our roping style here that's nothing but a snare.
The other pecking order still is the mare, the dominant mare. It says, no, I mean you do it my way. It's not aggressive, it's not dominant, it's respect. And I think that's where people sometimes misinterpret pecking orders being dominating, submissive. No, Fred just wants his horse to pay attention, respect, and trust.
Well, that's a fancy way to rope a horse. Don't you have to have some fancy stuff? Broken bop handles, and how if we just do little things that we never get in trouble. Now, this horse, what we'll try to do is actually teach him to respect us a little bit, to take some steps toward us. When he takes a step toward, Now, we just keep working the ring over. We might get him to lunge a little bit with a rope on. Now we try to get that rope up a little bit higher up on his neck. And I want him to stop, if I can, and kind of face me. When he takes a step, I pull. Take a step, we'll pull. He's still bracing against me, but we take a step. Whoa. These are the basic, anyone can do this. These ropes are, the problem with most people using ropes, they have a snubbing post. You ever go to those old time ones where I was raised up, they had a snubbing post in the middle, and that was the thing to do. A thing to do with this in the early days is when you choked them down, well, they regained their senses good, you had your saddle on them, you got on them on their way up. But it's really not the way to do it. You'll just take one, don't just keep yanking on these ropes because you can cut their air off. But we'll get him to where he's turning into us, just a little, then we give him slack. Good. See, we're seeing what response we're seeing him lick his lips some. Then the next deal, see that rope falls down, it's not, you can really hurt one with these ropes like this if you get them hung up. Then how I start cutting down on the escape area. Now, this is about as close as he's going to let me get without him wanting to run. He thinks this rope's an extension of my arm. What do? We simply start throwing it over his head. We pull him in a little, slack. He learns pretty quick. Hey, now he's trying to figure a way out of this. Slack. If we start all in this way instead of putting a halter in them and letting them sneaking up on that long drag rope, I think you'll get along with them better. He's still fighting against me. Sometimes you'll have to give him slack a little bit earlier than you wanted to. But it's still, see, he's showing some acceptance with it licking. We'd like to get him to come in a little bit. Now we give him slack. He's starting to be a little bit more submissive. Carry this kind of stuff on for a while. And every day, it's one of the enjoyable things about working these wild horses. It's simply, if you don't hurt them, it gets better every day. But I find over the years, why do some of these old-time cow outfits used to have the rough string riders? And that was quite a distinction to how the big outfits had the wild horses that they had to hire special cowboys to ride and things like that. Most of the horses didn't come that way. They weren't born that way. We humans made them that way, the way we treated them. And if we give them a chance, I think any horse can be patient and don't hurt them. They can be a good working animal. So what we try to do is just keep working on our deal. We'll back up, we advance and retreat some with him, but it's just a situation we just keep working on him and get better and better. Heretofore, we've taken horses about like this and the last two train deals and kind of sneaked a ride on them, but really you can tell. We'll get in some horses here later on today that I can show you what I think a horse should be in this condition or shape is mine before we start riding them. He's still a little bit bothered by me a little bit. He's looking outside a little bit more. I don't have his attention like I'd like to have it. But We just pitch that rope all over them. How many of your horses that maybe now when a rope gets behind them like this, you have a runaway? You can eliminate those things in your ground training. A horse is just as good as the foundation you put under him. If you put a good foundation under the horse when you train him, you'll have a good horse. But if you have a weakness in your foundation, you'll never have a very good horse. And one thing I found, most of us, we're a lot better on doing groundwork than we are when we get on one's back. That's when they get confused. That's when we start laying the spurs to them, jerking, pulling. But if we'll just concentrate and do good groundwork, it'll just get better every day. We'd like to get this horses, I'd like to get the escape area if we're heelable. And the other thing that that tall people like me, we have a little bit of a problem is the fact when you're higher than a horse's eyes, we see horses are always scared of, particularly a wild horse, scared of things above them. I think maybe it's mountain lions or something they've learned to protect themselves. So really, by simply getting lower than their eyes, and we think, well, that it actually makes it the environment a little bit more relaxed for them. But when you get scared, don't just go to jerking on them. Let them go. And let's kind of step in front of him. Then we'll kind of get him to relax a little bit. Stop him. Okay. Now we go a little bit farther here. He's starting to get a little bit how we teach him. We simply teach him to lead again on the same deal. We never pull straight away from him. This horse doesn't want to give to the right as much as we'd like for him to, so we'll pull him pretty hard a time too, but he's still pegging with his right front leg. Now, but always these ropes, give him slack. Then we get over to one side, then we kind of pull him over a little. The basic learning to lead. In just the few seconds we've talked with him, we give him slack. First thing you know, hardly any effort at all. We don't have to tie the winch onto him or the tie him behind the pickup. We get him to lead. But again, this rope, he thinks it's why it's so gentle to a horse is the fact he thinks it's just an extension of my arm. See how much he's already given, a lot more. Okay, when you put your rope on him, figure out a way that you're going to get it off. And normally, you don't have any problem with it. We may have to have a longer one for the first time or two. He might be a little bit spooked, but that's fine. We won't go to jerking on him. Had we gone to jerking on him, that we told him that, hey, that hurt. I'm supposed to sail out every time somebody walked up and approached me with a stick. And we'll slide that kind of up the rope. He's already used to the rope. And we just smell of it. And it just gets, it might take a little while, but remember, patience is a virtue of working with horses. A lot of real learned people I've talked with or said horses, I figure horses have an IQ of about a 3-year-old. Now, I don't know if that's right or not, but I know they learn a lot. They can learn a lot. They can figure us out really pretty quick. And patience and a lot of repetition. That's the secret in training horses and trying to fix it into a situation where it doesn't hurt them. Now, the thing about this rope pulling him tight on his neck, I don't just try to overpower him or I don't do it around. There is a certain amount of pain that's going into that. But the thing about it is, the real secret is that you quit. You quit pulling it pretty quick. This minute he gives. So we're going to smell out this hook here. If I could do a real fancy flip, I could get it up out of his head, couldn't I? Okay, that's my little rendition of how we start them. They're all, remember when you're starting a horse, you got to kind of have a plan, but let that horse formulate your plan. Let him kind of tell you what he's going to do. If he's a real nervous horse, remember, by all means, keep him with another horse. And you people adopting horses, some of these horses that are very timid kind of horses are way down on the pecking order. For heaven's sakes, get 2 of them, or have one at home that you can put them with. We cut horses off here sometimes that we make some big mistakes. Some of these horses, we isolate them by themselves and they get self-destruct just like this. They don't have someone to guide them, someone to lead them, and I mean, it's into the fence, broken necks, those kind of things. So we're constantly trying to analyze personalities. The bossy horses, you can put him in the corral up there on top of that hill, and he will stay up there as long as you feed and water him and take care of him. But these timid horses, you put one of them in a pen up there by himself, and you're asking for trouble. He's either going over the fence, or he's going to self-destruct, I can guarantee you. So always remember, if you can, it's better to not take any chances. When you take them home, put them with another horse, or to get 2.
The horse we're going to bring in next is actually a horse that Naomi's picked out. Is that right, Fred? Okay, and he's had a little bit of work, but you're going to see a complete different personality on this horse. Now this horse has had more work than some of these other ones. Oh, it's the big black horse now. This is the horse that chased this guy yesterday. All this one has to do is look at him and he's gone. You talk about respect, fear. How to put fear in a horse? Get a big black one. It was cute though. Now you should have seen Blackjack. He had fun. He was doing it so sneaky. Every time my back was turned, I kept going, "What's the matter?" You know, this horse was standing there quietly, and I'd turn my back, and he'd be running around crazy, and then he'd stand there, and Blackjack would go at him again. So you see how long that impression lasted with him. All Blackjack had to do was walk next to him and look at it like he was going to do something to him. He didn't do anything, just made it look like he was going to. This next horse is I believe he is a 4-year-old also. He's a gelding now. He was gelded about 3 weeks ago, but he still has a lot of stallion behaviors. And I don't know if he's going to do it today or not, but I'll tell you what he did yesterday. We had a lot of horses in here together, and we may bring back a mare with him so you can see how the relationships are, how they work with other horses. But I was talking earlier this morning about a stallion's behavior when they want to pin their ears back, and then they start to swing their heads, and the next move is they're going to come at you. Well, he did that, and he was protecting this little gray mare that we'll bring out later this afternoon. And it was a very obvious, you know, 1, 2, 3, I said, back off, she's mine, get out of my way. He's scared. He's a little bit of a scaredy cat, though, so he couldn't make himself be very aggressive. It was more just of a test. And all I did was put my hand in front of him and said, "I'm not going anywhere." Well, that was enough to make him back off, and he got scared, and he lost his confidence, and he sort of went over in the corner and pouted because he couldn't show off to this mare. So we're going to bring him back in by himself. And, you know, if everything goes right, he'll be quiet like this last one. I mean, you hate to say they're going to make liars out of you, but this horse, I would say, is a lot more nervous. He's going to take a longer time than a horse like this 2-year-old colt. Here he comes. Oh, good. Okay. Let me get out of the way from him. Here comes Snorty. Come on, Snorty. All right. Here's the big wild gelding now. Oh, okay. Oh, it still fell. It's okay. How'd you end up with a lead rope on you, huh? Now, he's been worked with how many weeks, Fred? 2 weeks. Okay. So you can already see his behavior is a little bit more nervous than a lot of these other horses, but he's had more work. It's okay. It's okay. Most of them outgrow this stage of snorting, but some of them never do. One Mustang that a friend of mine had, she died at 42, but she was burned in a barn. It wasn't because she actually died. She was crippled as could be. She never lost this snorting. From the day the gal had her, she got her, she was about 12 years old, until she was 42 years old. She always snorted. She snorted at everybody. Now, it could have been in old age. She couldn't see. She could smell a little bit, but she was probably blind as a bat. She never lost that snortiness. Mares tend to be usually more snorty than males. But this is an example of a male horse that's snorty. He tends to be, and whether this is going to go away or not, it probably will. As he gets more comfortable with people and being around, it'll settle down. And the best thing with a horse like this, if you start pushing him and making him run around, he's going to get more snorty. Because, and this is where you have to be able to see the difference. Now, the last bay horse, one, his body type's round and fat, you can tell. He's an easy keeper. He's sort of laid back. Things don't upset him. This horse, look at his body type even. He's a little tighter, trimmer. They all get fed very well here. There's no reason you should have a fat horse and a skinny horse. The difference is this horse worries more. He's not going to be quite as easy a keeper until he can relax enough to enjoy his food, to enjoy life a little bit. He's a horse that wants things to go a little extra slow for him. He's going to take maybe 30 seconds to look at something, where another horse might do it in 3 or 4 seconds. And you have to be able to read these things in a horse so you don't make a mistake and jeopardize the trust. Now, he's the kind of horse, if I threw my hands up in the air right now, he could jump out of his skin. Now, the bay horse probably would have jumped a foot and then held his ground and looked at me. It's more like, you did what? He wouldn't have really frightened him as much. This horse, it would frighten him. I mean, a true scared horse, not something that he would want to push. This is also the kind of horse that you don't want to back into a corner and get them too afraid, because then you force them to be aggressive. And you don't ever want to have them be aggressive towards you if you can help it. Here, now he's settling down. Okay. That's it. He still hasn't lowered his head much to act like he wants to sniff. That's it. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Now. There we go. Okay. It's okay. It's all right. Yeah, you made your own. Come on, look over here. Come on. Come on. Now, this is a horse that Fred's worked with a little bit. I haven't worked at all with him. And I'm going to let Fred come back in here and tell you a little bit more about him. And we're going to ask him to do a little bit more. But you can see how he's leading, what he's doing. I take one step, he takes one step. There's no pull. It's a give and take. And it's a very loose line. And this is what you want. So you stop, he stops. Where a horse stays right at your shoulder and you're at his shoulder. This is how they act in a group. They don't have to get pulled in a herd. They follow. And they're keeping an eye on you. And it's usually shoulder to shoulder. I shouldn't have to look at him. He should just stay right where my shoulder is and always stay behind me. If he starts to get in front of me, two things can happen. One, see his lips? You see his tongue going in and out? He's starting to lick a little bit. That's a good sign. He's relaxing. If he starts to go in front of me, he can get away. Also, he's saying, I'm more important than you. I'm jumping in front. Like Fred said, you want to get a little bit of a pecking order established so that he has enough respect. He's not going to run over you. And I can say, no, I get to be in front this time. You get to be behind me. And there's no force. If he would do something like get in front of me, all I would need to do is raise my arm up like this. And that's what his mind is thinking, is not that it's going to hit him. He's never been hit. He's not head shy. But what it does tell him is, wait, stop. And if I were a mare, a lead mare, or another stallion, I was doing that, and I wanted to be in front, I'd be swinging my neck around, or be pushing it up and saying, whoa, I'm here. So this is all body language that a horse can understand. There's no need to take a rope and hit him. There's no need to jerk on him. You know, why people use stud chains and metal chains over a horse's nose, I still don't understand. You don't need that with a horse. You need them to be paying attention to you and listening to you. That doesn't mean you're never going to get their attention and give them a little slap on the behind, just like you would a kid. You know, hey, listen to me. But you don't need to be going around jerking with them. You want them to pay attention to you. You want to be able to go around both sides of the horse so that they're comfortable. Now, he's letting me get pretty close to his space and still being relaxed, and this is good. This is also teaching respect, because you're saying, I'm coming in wherever I want to, and I want you to stay here. And this is exactly what horses make each other do. They play sort of counting coop. If you've ever watched horses play, male horses particularly, they come up to each other, and they grab each other right down on the leg. Okay, yeah, right there. And they walk up, and a horse can be grazing quietly. Another horse will come up to him like he's going to scratch his back, and they'll start here. And then he can go down the leg and give him a nip, and then they take off running. It's a game. It's like, nah, 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 I got you. And so this is the same relationship that you want to get, this respect that says, I mean, you just stay here and relax. When I ask you to move, then you can move. I'm not going to hurt you. In fact, I can make you feel good. Scratching is one of the things that they do a lot of to each other, mares to mares, stallions to stallions, babies to babies. Just watch them. They spend a lot of time scratching each other. And this is a form of communication, too, where you can just get to know the horse and try to get those muscles to relax so that they're not quite so tight. If you get a horse that's tense, and of course if he's never let you touch him, I'm not going to say put your hand up here. But if you have a horse that trusts you and they start to blow up, the best place to take a hold on them is over the wither area. Now why do you think that is? Right, that's where the mothers do it. If baby gets frightened, what do? They run right underneath the mother's chest, and she puts her neck over them. I mean, it's just common sense. So if a horse gets frightened, if I pulled on his head, put yourself in that position. You just saw the scariest hairy monster in the world is going to come eat you, and someone just put something over your jaw and strapped it closed and put a helmet on you and tugged around your neck. What would you do? You'd panic, right? It's like, oh my God, I can't escape. So if you leave the head loose, which gives them plenty of escape room with the head, they can smell, see, do whatever they want, and hold them, put your arm over them. That's comforting to a horse. It says, hey, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to jump. I'm here. And that's how horses communicate. It's a safety. It's saying, I'll protect you. You don't need to run. And that way you never get into a tug-of-war with a horse. You can ride a horse with nothing on it, a halter like Fred took his horse out. You don't need a lot of the equipment that we use to I don't know, if trick horses, or that we think we need a lot of different bits. Anyway, has this horse had a bridle on yet? No. Okay.
Ones of you that are not acquainted with the name Michael Blake, he was the author of Dances with Wolves, one of the movies that had won tremendous large number of Academy Awards. Would you stand up, Michael, and give him all a big hand? In bridling the horse, particularly these kind of horses, I think Naima hopes to use this horse as an endurance horse. And I think he's an excellent horse, has the temperament for it. He's a very willing kind of a horse. We work with him. There's a lot of little things I start working with a horse to get him conditioned to bridle him. First of all, you got to get your hands up over their head. And we have to, their first reaction is hey, to fight back and things like this. But after I start putting a halter, it's usually 4 or 5 days before I ever put a halter on, then I start putting a bridle on them. And there's a lot of little things I might show you that I do with these horses when I start getting into them, close to them, is the fact that we try to get him to turn around. He's going to have to learn to turn around, and I want his head kind of tucked a little bit. We can get 1 step, 2 steps, that's fine. Then the other side we go. Have you ever rode those horses when you go to turn them, boy, their neck was stiff as a board? We never did a lot of these things. We actually get them to move get their head tucked in a little bit. Then get where you can do 360s. I mean, you can really rip around and around and around, and it really goes. And you want him to learn a horse to turn well. Look at any horse to turn. He steps over. He steps over with his front feet. And these are things that you can teach him to do. We get another one in here a little bit longer. I'll show you a lot of the exercise we go through. Little things. What this does, it relaxes him, you teach him a little bit of communications. You get him turned around just a little. Just take your deal. If you can push his head just a little bit. We want him to get where he can really turn well. So he's having trouble going to the left, he's stepping behind. As long as we work with him. Hey, we made 1 good step over. These are little things that you do. It builds trust, builds confidence in you. You'll have a good working partner if you got a horse that's got confidence in you. Reason we see so many wrecks is they don't understand what we want to do. We go kick, spur, whip, they don't know what one, and then we see runaways. But the thing to do with these horses, again, a kind of bit, there's a lot of things. I'll show you the reason I simply prefer, I don't ride too much with these kind of bits. That's what you call a full cheek snaffle. They fit in their mouth, and this bar here, it can't pull through. I would never criticize anyone's equipment, but I really like to start off with these full cheek snaffles, and some of them they have the soft ports, some of them have rubber. A lot of horses don't like rubber. But remember, keep that mouth as soft as you can. Remember we were doing some work with his head, he's still just a little bit. Thing about it, I want to grab his foretop now, and we're going to come up this way with that thing. Another thing I didn't tell you, man, I stick my finger in their mouth a lot. They can't bite you. If you keep your hand between the molars and the front teeth, they can't bite you. A lot of horses like their gums massaged. Do those things. I don't know how many the clinics we've had, we've always had a horse show up here that people can bridle. Well, the reason they do that is the fact I'm sticking my hand in there. We're just gradually going to ease us to do that. Always go with the right ear first, left ear next. Then when you go off don't just put it on and say, hey, I got the row accomplished, let's take it off. Now he might not know how to get that bit out of his mouth, so we'll stick our finger in his mouth and get it out. Good boy. Always reward them. They got to be rewarded. They have no idea when things are good or bad. Well, they're bad, usually get beat up on. But good, we have to reward them. That's the only way they have of knowing. And it's good. Again, we come here, always get that foretop. I don't know what it does, but it seems to help. Don't try to force your finger in your mouth, a bit in your mouth. Stick your finger in there, they'll open it up. Come over, see how much easier it's getting? Now, these horses that don't ever let these rascals start getting their tongue over the bit. Watch that, keep the bit up in their mouth pretty snug the first time. I always have you a little string. So it looks kind of corny, but I guarantee you can't get his tongue over the bit. You may have to do that a few times, but don't ever let that horse get in a bad habit of getting that tongue over that bit. He wants to be under that. So for whatever that's worth, well, don't be afraid to spend some time riding your horse. Now, we'll take this out. We'll watch him a little bit. I'll take it up one more notch. Now people are always asking me about how tight to put these bits in these mouth of a horse. Again, I want it pretty tight to start with because I don't want to actually give him a chance to get his tongue over the bit. But after I start riding him, I want that bit to actually lay off the corner of his mouth. When I pull, I don't want just something that grabs him. I want something that gives him an indication that something's going to happen. So why I usually do put these bits on them right off and just let them over the halter and let them get used to it. I don't know if this horse is ready yet, but we'll see right quick. Is again, a way we start a horse to lunging. I've seen people get out and beat the ground and stomp and everything. How we're going to get a horse to lunge? Now he's kind of, I got to get some more equipment kind of sawed up here. Hey, you got too many things flopping around. A lot of people get out and start kind of beating the ground. But again, what we did, we were doing our thing. We were getting him to move away from us, and we simply stepped back. So easy to get a horse to lunge. One of the basic moves. See, he's actually just a little bit of pressure. How he's already starting. We want to get collected. That's a good sign. And I always lunge a horse from the hip. Don't just go around in circles all the time. Make some rectangles. The big thing to say, whoa, come in. This is how you teach horses to catch it. Then we'll see what we can do from the other side. Again, we don't look at him, we approach him, and hey, good job. Yeah. And doing the lunging, I really get a horse out of these round runs pretty quick, and I start using, well, this old rope over there, it's about 40-something foot long. I start going out and just lunging one of the big lines on the outside. Then again, we'll do the same thing that we were doing a while ago, trying to get him to step away from us. We want him to step away, then we simply step back. We can be careful, and we want to lunge him rather than him lunging us. If we're not careful, we'll have him doing those things. And you remember, we can tell that this horse is left-handed. See, he's having trouble going to the right. All horses are either right or left-handed. Normally what you'll have to do is do more work on the right side than you're on the left. Again, remember, the horse don't transfer knowledge from one side of the brain to the other. So you have to balance out your training from side to side. And usually, like this one on the right side, we're going to have to do maybe a third more. But again, we're going to say the word, whoa, back up, and reward it. These type of repetition is what gets our horses to where they trust us. Then the other thing, which we never used to do, it was kind of the greenhorn type of thing to do, was drive horses, ground drive them. I don't know if I've got smarter or just more gray hair in my head, but I'll tell you, ground driving a horse is one of the best things. These horses are a little short on confidence that I've ever seen. I just start a horse out here just like we're doing today, and sometimes I put a strap halter on one and hook my driving lines in there. Don't have a saddle or anything on them. And just get out here, and we try to go around. If we, here's another little way to get them kind of going, kind of scaring them off. Here, if I had the other driving line, which I'll show you later on this afternoon, we just start kind of driving them this way with two lines. Then we gradually starts getting bigger. The circle starts getting bigger, and whoa. And then if we get in a wreck, we just drop them. We don't. When you get those saddles on them, or you get those driving harnesses on them, and boy, you get in wrecks, you get some of the worst tangled up messes I've ever seen. Then you're tied into his mouth, which is the most sensitive thing. You're trying to keep his mouth soft. Keep horses that they're really soft. You need to really be careful with this with this mouth. I see people riding those old leverage bits with shanks down here. Some of them you got to remember, Every pound of pull on those leverage things, you exert sometimes 5 or 6 pounds of pressure on their jaw and their mouth. So always be aware of what kind of hardware you have on their mouth. They're sensitive, and try to protect it as long as you can. Okay. I guess the boss tells me we got to quit and have some. Oh, and we want Naomi to ride in on her horse. This is her horse, and we'll show you her other horse that she's had tremendous success with.